Welcome to week 32 of our piano adventure. Today we will continue with our 16th note syncopation rhythm warm-up. We will be looking at the next three half-diminished chords: F sharp half diminished, D flat half diminished, and A flat half diminished, as well as their accompanying Locrian modes. And then, for today's reading, I have composed a piece in honor of the late, great Chick Corea. He composed a book of pieces that was pretty hip called The Children's Songs. And so I created my own children's song today in the key of E minor as an homage to this great composer. So without further ado today, let's go and get warmed up on the drum. Today's rhythm warm-up will be the last week with only 2 lines. We'll return to having 4 lines per week next week, but today will be the last time that we say and play each line before adding the metronome. So let's go ahead and get started with line 1, saying and playing it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and switch hands, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and top line hands together, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and excellent. Let's add the metronome to that. It will be at 40 BPM and the clicks will represent the downbeats. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and switch hands, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and top on hands together, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4 E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and excellent. Let's move on to line 2 and we will say and play it before we add the metronome. 1 E, 2 E, 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4. Switch your hands, 1 E, 2 E, 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E, 2, 3 and 4. Top line hands together, 1 E, 2 E, 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 let's add the metronome. We'll speed it up to 45, and now the clicks of the metronome will represent the upbeats. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1 E, 2 E, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3 E, and 4, and 1 E, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1 E, 2, 3, and switch your hands. 1 E, 2 E, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3 E, and 4, and 1 E, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1 E, 2, 3, and top on hands together. 1 E, 2 E, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3 E, and 4, and 1 E, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1 E, 2, 3, and 4. Excellent. Now that we're all warmed up, let's head back to the piano. Today, we will be looking at F sharp minor 7 flat 5, D flat minor 7 flat 5, and A flat minor 7 flat 5. That's a mouthful, or if you would just like to say half diminished, that works as well. Remember, these are interchangeable terms, and we want to get used to associating minor 7 flat 5 with half diminished. All right, so let's go check these out on the keyboard. Let's get things started with F sharp half diminished, starting with our right-hand inversions. And switching to the left-hand inversions. Let's do one chord, two hands. All right, and let's talk about F sharp Locrian. F sharp is the T of G. So we'll play the G major scale, except we'll start on F sharp, and we'll play the chord in our left hand. And we'll switch it. Okay, let's check out D flat half diminished. We'll start with our right hand inversions. Left hand inversions. And one chord, two hands. And then let's talk about D flat Locrian, or C sharp Locrian technically, because this key is the T of D, and D has a C sharp, right? So now it doesn't matter what you call it, because it's all that matters is the shape of the keys. But what we're going to do is we're going to play the D major scale, but we're going to start on D flat or C sharp, and then we'll add the chord in the left hand. And then we can switch that up. Excellent. And finally, today, let's take a look at A flat half diminished, and we'll begin with our right hand inversions. We'll do our left hand inversions now. And then we'll do one chord between two of our hands. And then let's talk about A flat Locrian or G sharp Locrian, because this key is the T of A, and the T of A is technically G sharp. Again, it doesn't matter because all that matters is the shape of the keys. So we have our A scale, except we'll be starting on G sharp or A flat. We'll add the chord in the left hand and it will sound something like this. And then when we switch that up, it will sound like this. Let's talk about today's sight reading, the children's song in E minor. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a tribute to the late great Chick Corea. If you haven't checked out Chick Corea yet, you're in for a treat because he has such a legacy. There probably isn't a pianist on this planet who hasn't been influenced by Chick Corea. And he's known for playing classical, playing jazz, playing fusion, just about everything. But, you know, first and foremost, he thought of himself as a composer. And one of my favorite little works that he wrote was a collection of songs called the Children's Songs. And they're just numbered: Children's Song number 1, Children's Song number 2. Go check that book out if you haven't already. But basically, in those songs, he would create these little portraits, and each one would be have an interesting rhythmic concept and then also a interesting harmonic concept. He would follow the rules of harmony, but he would also bend them a little bit, and so that's what we did today. We set up a little syncopation in the left hand that really doesn't change until the very end, and then while we are going to be using all the chords and scales that we've seen so far, we're not going to be using them totally in a functional way. And so because of that, instead of using Roman numerals, today we're just going to label with regular chord symbols, all right? So as you can notice, let's do just a little formal analysis. We have our rhythmic ostinato that is going to happen throughout the piece until the very end. Remember, an ostinato is just something that continually happens, all right, over and over. So the left hand is going to have pretty much the same rhythm. We have a return to that vamp right here. So this piece could be considered something that we call through composed because it does have a return, but for the most part, the song just goes on and the melody just kind of spins out, okay? Now we have two main sections so here's our intro, right? And then down here, we're gonna have the meat of the composition, and then we will have a contrasting section right here. And then, believe it or not, we will return to the harmonies that we saw in the green section right here at the end. So although the two green sections don't necessarily look exactly the same, they are going to be related, and we'll see that in just a moment as we dive deeper into these harmonies, okay? Now, the first chords that we're going to start off with are simply going to be E minor, and then F sharp, half diminished, right? So we'll use the minor 7 with the flat 5, okay? And so there we go. We had to throw in a little half diminished, right? Because that is the unit we're looking at. And it just goes back and forth and uses that a few times. E minor, and then of course the F sharp, minor 7 with the flat 5. All right, now that brings us to the opening of the theme, where the melody actually comes in, and of course we will still have our E minor. Now I want to draw your attention because when I decided how I wanted this harmony to flow, I really based it off of the bass line. All right, so if we take a look at the whole notes, you'll notice that we have a descending line. The line is always descending, and even in some places it's doing so chromatically, right? So basically what I did is I wanted that bass line to descend, and then I would think to myself, what is a chord that I could build off of this note that would also make sense with the chord that it just came from in terms of the voices leading to each other in a coherent way, all right? So let's take a look at what we ended up getting out of that, okay? So like I said, we started with our E minor, and we didn't change it up too much at first, right? We just have the F sharp minor 7 with the flat 5, and then we end up going to a B dominant 7, all right? And now this is weird, right? So this is where it gets a little funky, but as you'll hear when we play the piece, it sounds really cool, all right? And that's one of the reasons I love bending the rules as much as I love following the rules, because you can get just so many colors, right? So in this case, we would think that usually B7 would lead to E minor, right? But surprise, we're actually gonna lead to the relative major. So that's a G chord, okay? So the 5 of the tonic of this piece is actually, instead of leading to it, it's leading to its relative major, all right? Now from there, of course, it still gets strange because we have that chromatic bass line, and so what we're gonna have here is an A dominant 7. And you would think that an A dominant 7 would probably lead maybe to, oh, I don't know, a D chord, right? But because of the chromatic bass line, where we go instead is just a regular C chord. How funky is that? But yet still very cool. And if you look at the voices, they all lead very well because, check it out, we already have the E and we already have the G. We just get rid of the A and we lower the C sharp to a C natural, and boom, you go from an A7 to a C with very, very nice voice leading, all right? Now this next part is actually probably one of my favorite parts of the piece, because what we do is we stay on that C chord, but we make it a C dominant 7, and this is really cool. We're going to actually just lower that chord, that C dominant 7, by a half step and create a B dominant 7, right? And now what's happening is we have arrived at the 5, and we will actually use that to return to the 1 in this case. However, we can't just return to a normal 1 because we're at the middle of the piece and we need to do something funky here. So what happened is we got down to that B, and now actually, as you can see, that B is going to stay in the bass. And what we have technically going on here is a pedal tone. And I love pedal tones. I think they're just so cool. And so here we do have a pedal tone happening with our B. And then over the top, we have a little bit of a surprise because instead of going to an E minor, we're actually going to go to an E major. And the reason for that is because I wanted to do a little bit of a Spanish cadence, all right? That's one of the homages to Chick Corea. I think one of his most famous pieces that he wrote, and one of my favorite pieces to perform, is called Spain. And, you know, he always was very, very good at playing around with those Spanish sounds. And so this is simply 3 major chords. The first one is E, then we go up a half step. Oh, and you know what? Let's go ahead and mark that down as an E over a B, all right? And then we have a half step up, we have an F, but that's still over a B. And then we go up a whole step from there to a G major chord, which is over a B. And then we're gonna go back down to our F over our B. We'll wind up over here, still on our E over B, our F over the B, our G over the B, back down to the F over the B, and then finally that's going to deliver us back to our opening little motif with the E minor, and then we have the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, right? And there we have it. Now, as I said earlier, this section is pretty cool because I sort of made a little bit of a 4-part writing, although, you know, it definitely breaks the rules or bends the rules a bit. And so what we end up doing is I just boiled down all of these chords, and I got rid of the melody, I got rid of the descending bass line, and I really just kind of built a 4-part writing based off of that. So what we can see is we have our E minor, we have, and I'm actually going to scoot this back just a little bit to give us a little more room. So we have our E minor, we have our F sharp minor 7 with the flat 5. Then that leads us to our B7, to the G. Then we have our A7 to C, C7, B7, and then I couldn't just end on a regular E minor chord. So what I did, and if you'll think back to the Clouds of minor 7 composition that we did, I did the minor chord on the bottom, so we can see that we have an E minor chord on the bottom there, but then we have on top of it a major chord that is built off of the flat 7 of E minor, which is D. So in this case, we have a D chord over an E minor, and it sounds real nice. I think it really wraps this piece up well. And there you have it. That's our children's song in E minor, okay? Now, one more note, because this does have a groove, right? This left hand is meant to be a rhythmic ostinato. And so the tempo that I found to really set it off and make it click and sound good was around 130 BPM. All right, and so once you can get this up to 130 BPM, it will sound about the way I intended it. However, please don't let that stress you out. If you need to take it way under tempo, if you need to go at 60 BPM, if you need to go at 50 BPM, whatever you need to do to learn this is totally fine. You have the composer's permission, all right? But ideally, if you wanted to one day play it at full speed, I would say 130 BPM is a nice thing to shoot for, and it's really not that bad. All right, so without further ado, let's check out this piece on the keyboard. If you enjoyed today's lesson and want to show support for the Piano Dojo, you can do so by finding today's music, show notes, and much more on my website, pianodojo.com, or simply subscribe and share this channel with anyone who's looking for answers about the piano. Until next time, happy practicing.